what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about animal rights versus animal welfare. I think it's really important for you to understand this stuff. The biggest problem we have, is dealing with the dominance of the welfare paradigm. Things will never change as long as that is the dominant paradigm. Never going to happen. So it's important for you to be educated about why the welfare paradigm is not good. This does not mean that all of your welfare friends are evil, or that you should, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, I know most of the major players in the welfare movement are people I've known for decades. And I like some of them, very much. I just think they're wrong. So it's not a question of, this is an opportunity for us to brag on people and say that they're bad people. It's an opportunity to say this approach is a bad approach and does not work, cannot work. Indeed, is not only not effective, but it's counterproductive. It's pushing things back. Am I going to get this powerful? I mean, I worked hard on this powerful. I want to be powerful. Zach had my thumb drive.
Oh, he has it?
Well, yeah.
Speak into the microphone.
Zach does have my memory sticks. Also, I just wanted to share this with you in case anybody was worried about it. My partner just texted me. Anna just texted me to say that the following, that the History Channel is discussing the logistical problems if the rapture happens at rush hour. So, isn't America a great place? I mean, we think if the world's going to hell in a handcart, people are worried about the logistical problem, rapture at the rush hour. Okay. Well, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to have to bring my beautiful, beautiful PowerPoint presentation up as soon as I can. Bob, do you know where Zach is?
Yeah, he's coming down right now.
Okay, great. That's good. All right. There are basically two sorts of welfare regulations. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. There's two sorts of welfare regulations. Let me go back to the example I gave you this morning, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this. It's important you understand this, okay? When we are talking about regulating animal exploitation, we're talking about changing the behavior of institutional users with respect to the chattel property, the animals that they have, that they are exploiting. So if the farmer, let's go back to the example, it's a simple example, but it illustrates more. If the farmer pays $1 for the pig, and the farmer spends 25 cents on housing, veterinary care, etc., okay, the farmer's got to sell that pig for at least $1.26, actually a little bit more because the farmer's lost the use of the money in the period of time that the farmer has purchased the animal and was unable to use that dollar for another purpose or to loan it out, okay? So, or lend it out. And so the farmer's got to make at least $1.25. Now, there are two and only two ways to affect how the farmer, affect how the farmer treats the animal. You go to the farmer and say, you're spending $1.25, but if you make this welfare change, you'll only spend $1.20. So if you're still selling the pig for $1.27, you're going to make 7 cents profit rather than 2 cents profit. Okay? So the first way is to convince the farmer or the institutional user, I'm not any institutional user, is to convince the institutional user that the current way of treating the animal is not economically efficient. That the farmer could do something which arguably improves the welfare of the animal and result in more efficient exploitation. This is the argument, for example, to get rid of gestation crates. The pork industry is in the process of getting away from gestation crates anyway. Why? Because there are alternatives to gestation crate, like electronic sow feeding, for example. There are several, but that's one, which actually reduces the overall production costs of pork. All right? So it's arguably a welfare benefit, but it's a benefit which maximizes or increases the economic the economic efficiency of the production process. So that's one way of doing it. The second way is to go to the farmer and say, you know, I've got a group of people who like animals, and they're willing to pay you $1.30 instead of $1.27 or $1.25 or 26 or whatever the hell it is. But they're willing to pay you more because they care about animal welfare. Right, so they'll pay you more. So those are the two ways, those are the two sorts of welfare regulation that we have. Let me give you an example of the former, one that I think is historically significant and one that people point to all the time as some great success. I mean, it was at one level, but not at another. The Federal Humane Slaughter Act, which was enacted in the United States in 1958, required that large animals, pigs, cows, calves, had to be stunned before they were shackled, hoisted, and cut. Now, if you look, and that is looked at by the welfare community. Is he coming with that thing?
Yeah.
Okay. The welfare community looks at that and says that's a great victory. If you read the legislative history of the Federal Humane Slaughter Act, what do you see? You see Congress recognizing that when an animal that weighs 2,000 pounds is hanging upside down by her back leg, she moves around a lot. And what does that do? It causes carcass damage that reduces that. That's a problem, an economic problem, because it reduces the value of the meat. The other thing that it does is the animal moves into workers. Workers get injured. That's another cost. That's another business cost. Okay? So if you look at the Federal Humane Slaughter Act, what Congress said was, look, animals are suffering, and not only is it not necessary for them to suffer, but it's economically dumb because we're having worker injuries and we're having carcass damage, so we're going to require that they be stunned. That is a classic example of the first type of welfare reform I am talking about. Interestingly, in 1958, chickens weren't included. Why? Because people thought, well, it's idiotic to suggest chickens are small, right? So if they're hanging upside down, moving around, they're not going to injure workers. And they're not going to. It's not going to be a big deal. So we're not going. And chickens and smaller animals were not covered under the Federal Humane Slaughter Act. Now you have these animal groups like PETA and HSUS and other organizations arguing that these animals, that chickens, ought to be included under the Humane Slaughter Act, and they ought to basically be gassed rather than killed the way they're presently being. And if you look at the documents that PETA and HSUS put out, what they put out are basically studies from the agricultural economics journals, which indicate that when chickens, the present way of killing a chicken is you pack them in. Has anybody here ever been to a chicken slaughterhouse? Yeah, okay, well, you know what they're like. They're hideous places. And so they take the animals, they're transported, in these trucks. You see them on the highway all the time in these colored, plastic bins. And they grab them, they stick them upside down, they put their feet in clips, clips that you use for binding clips. They put them in these clips, and these animals are hanging upside down, and they're all moving around. Then they go through a stunning process where they're supposed to be they go through this electrified bath, and which is through a field, not necessarily through a bath, but through a field which is supposed to render them somewhat unconscious, but it doesn't work very well. And then they go through a blade, which is set at a particular height. And now these birds are different sizes, and they're all moving around, different. So sometimes it cuts off the top of the head, sometimes, it's a mess. And then they go into a scalding tank where they'd be feathered. Now, this process is barbaric. Like all slaughter is barbaric, I have been in lots of slaughterhouses, including one that Temple Grandin thinks is just grand. And I have to tell you something. I can't really tell the difference because because they all seem like hellholes to me. They're all hideous, hideous, hideous places. And now you have groups like PETA and HSUS trying to get the industry to move toward controlled atmosphere killing or gassing the chicken. Now, and the arguments that they make are it would be economically better, and they cite all of these studies that show that there's so much carcass damage. There's so much carcass damage that comes about as a result of the present slaughtering methods that it would be much better for the industry to use controlled atmosphere killing, and it would be. As I said to you this morning, if you were starting a chicken production, if you were starting a chicken processing operation now, and you didn't use controlled atmosphere killing, you would be behaving irrationally. The industry is in the process of moving. They're not just going to change overnight because they've got huge amounts of money invested in these things. They get tax advantages. So this is one of the reasons why, when a lot of these industries will agree to the welfare changes, they do it over a period of time. Why do they do that? Well, one reason why they do that is so they can continue to take the taxes, that they can continue to expense it out for tax purposes. And then, once the capital expense and once the capital investment has been thoroughly exploited, and they have to replace the slaughtering, the plant, then they'll go to controlled atmosphere killing because they'll save money. And there are worker injuries because you got workers who are near electricity, they're near blades, okay, they're near hot water. There are always injuries. There's always worker injuries in chicken slaughtering houses. And so what we need to do, so the groups are basically talking to industry and saying, this is better for you. Industry already knows that. They already know that, which is why they're in the process of transitioning to this stuff anyway. They're actually pretty far ahead in Europe. They're getting here. The tax laws are obviously different here. There are differences that account for why industry doesn't move as fast here as it does in other places. But they're responding to this, and they would do so anyway. I mean, this is this sort of this drama. The animal group shows up and says, this is what you got to do. And they say, no, no, no. And they have this big fight, and then industry eventually capitulates, and they have the kumbaya moment. And you know what? It is all theater. That's all it is. I mean, what's happened is the animal groups and the industry have a symbiotic relationship. They need each other. You know, the animal groups need industry because they get these victories that they would have gotten anyway. And so that they can declare victory and ask you all to give your money to them. And industry needs them because they like to have animal groups. They love to have PETA. I mean, I'm sure Kentucky Fried Chicken in Canada, which agreed to phase in controlled atmosphere killing over the next 3 million years, I'm sure that they were just delighted when PETA said, we're standing shoulder to shoulder with Kentucky Fried Chicken. It makes them look as though Kentucky Fried Chicken cares. Okay, so it's like it's a great benefit. So that's the first sort of welfare regulation is you're making animal exploitation more economically efficient. The second sort, great example of that, is cage-free eggs. Cage-free eggs will marginally, and I say marginally, raise the price of eggs. Okay? And so what people are hoping is that there is now people are more attuned to animal issues, and so they're a niche market, and they will buy these the slightly more expensive eggs for moral reasons. Okay, now people are doing it not just for moral reasons, but because as part of that campaign they were saying that conventional battery cages were harmful to health. Okay, so people were responding to that as well. It wasn't just an ethical thing; it was a health thing. So those are the two sorts of main of animal welfare regulations. Animal regulations which make animal exploitation more economically efficient, or animal welfare reforms that may actually add to the production cost. Okay, but what we're hoping that there's a niche market that will, in order to make itself feel better, pat itself on the back. I'm a good person. I eat cage-free eggs. Okay, so that I probably shouldn't have done it. Not lies. Oh, thanks. And so those are the only two ways welfare regulations work. Either making existing exploitation more efficient or developing a niche market that will pay slightly more. And I say slightly more because think about it. If you really had to pay, if you really were going to purchase animal products that were really and truly, I don't even know what the hell the word means humanely, but I mean, where the animals experience no suffering and were killed in a painless way, if such is possible, it would cost a huge amount of money. Anybody who would be willing to pay that would be a vegan anyway. Anybody who cared enough to pay that sort of money would be a vegan anyway. So what you're getting, when you go to Whole Foods and you buy level 5, you know, that's the highest level that that Mr. Mackey offers us, is the level 5 happy exploitation rating. Okay, if you buy level 5, do you think you're really getting animals that are treated well and are not being tortured? No, of course you're not. If you would believe that, you're delusional. You're delusional. That is absolutely not true. Those animals have been tortured, maybe not quite as bad as the other animals. Although I think that whole rating system is nonsense, and I think that those animals are in hideous situations. But even if they are, even if they're in marginally better situations, you know, you do it, you'll pay more money to those people so that you can feel better. I don't mean you, I mean people will pay more money to those folks so that they can feel better about continuing to eat animals. Okay? But there's, you know, if they really cared, they would stop eating them altogether. So this is just all they're doing. It's like you know, the church in the Middle Ages. You know, you can go and buy an indulgence, and you know you can go and buy. That's what they're doing. The animal movement is the Catholic Church of the 21st century. It's like, pay us, you know, give us a donation, and we'll make you feel better about continuing to exploit. So that's basically the model of animal welfare. Now, you know, I could spend like days talking about this, and I do. I teach a class, and we spend a lot of time talking about economic theory. And you know, this sad thing is, we want to change the world, but we're not willing to learn what we need to know to change the world. You've got to know some economics. You've got to understand some basic economics to understand why this can't work. Animals are chattel property. They only have external value. They only have extrinsic value. So every time you want one of their interests to be protected better, it costs money. Okay? And so that's why, for the most part, the only improvements we see are those improvements where we get a benefit by giving the animal that protection, and that's usually an economic benefit, and for the most part, animal welfare regulations fall into the first category. They make animal exploitation more economically efficient. But you've got to understand, do you all understand, is there anybody who doesn't understand what I just said, wants to ask me a question? Because it's imperative that you understand it. And I try to be clear. This is complicated stuff, and I'm trying to reduce it. I want to be simple, but not simplistic. So is there any, y'all happy with this? This is working? Okay, this is good. Okay. All right. So now, what's wrong with animal welfare? Well, don't get me started. We're fine. Okay. The first problem, hold on, let me see here. Something happened with this. I have no idea what's going on. Is that?
No, I'm here. That's a good jar?
Well, yeah. Can you get this thing up on the screen for me? The first problem with animal welfare, yeah, just get it's this one. Yeah, that's what I want. The animal welfare position is immoral. If animals are non-human persons with the moral right not to be property, remember this morning I talked about that. If animals are non-human persons who have the moral right not to be treated as property, then we ought not to be promoting humane animal exploitation. That's simply, I mean, think about this in a human context. Once you realize that someone has a fundamental, you can help me? Once you recognize that animals have this fundamental right, oh yeah, okay, we're fine. Okay. What's it? Yeah, okay. Oh, right, okay. If it's morally wrong, we shouldn't be promoting humane exploitation. Okay? I mean, if slavery is wrong, the solution is not to say let's whip the slaves 5 times a week rather than 6 times a week. I mean, obviously, whipping them 1 time less is better, but that doesn't make it morally right. And it's certainly not what a movement ought to be promoting as affirmatively a right, good thing to do. I mean, look, I'm not dumb. I understand that less suffering is better than more suffering. I do not believe, I understand that. Not something you can dispute. The problem I have is a movement that really believes in that non-human animals are persons and personhood status has no business promoting the less harm. Okay? And so we have to be very, very careful about that. I also think the less harm is nonsense. I think the less harm is like so less, it's de minimis. But the bottom line is, yes, it may be better to beat the slaves one time less a week. But should an anti-slavery movement be having campaigns for beating your slaves less, and then when some slave owner agrees to beat the slave less, they give him an award and they call him compassionate? I mean, but that's what the movement does, people. That's what this movement does. And it's funny, you can laugh, but it's appalling. It's really appalling. And a lot of it, I'll tell you, the whole thing, a lot of it goes back to this idea. In the 19th century, Jeremy Bentham, Gary Steiner talked about good old Jeremy yesterday. Jeremy Bentham said, well, it doesn't matter, animals matter, but because they can suffer, and that's all that matters. Yeah, sure they can't talk, sure they can't reason, but they can suffer, and that's all that matters. But Bentham was not a vegan. Indeed, he was not, he continued to eat lots of animals. Why? Because he believed that it was all right to kill them. He thought they had no interest in continuing to live. Okay? So his view was, well, we ought to take their interest in suffering seriously, but we ought not to take their interest in life seriously because as an empirical matter, they don't have an interest in continuing to live. And you can say, like, how crazy is that? Yeah, how crazy is that? Peter Singer, the father, I go back to this maternity issue here, the father of the animal rights movement, Peter Singer, maintained that same thing. Peter Singer basically says the same thing, that animals, for the most part, don't have an interest in continuing to live because they're not self-aware. So it's treatment that's the problem, not use. I disagree with that completely. I think use is the problem and treatment is a distraction. The whole treatment discussion is a distraction. All right, so it's immoral if we think that animals have moral status and we believe that they are members of the moral community, having campaigns in which we affirmatively praise and promote happy exploitation is violently immoral. And it's also ineffective because, first of all it does is makes animal exploitation more efficient. It's not pulling animals out of the property paradigm. It's not doing that, people. It's further enmeshing them in it. It's just requiring that we do it more efficiently as an economic matter. At the most, what it does is creates these niche markets for people who are affluent, who are slightly more affluent, and who will pay a little extra money for a tortured animal so that they can buy their indulgence from the animal rights movement. That's really what, it's ineffective. It results in very little increased protection. There's no doubt that the most humanely treated animal you can buy, even here in sunny California, the most humanely treated animal that you can buy has been treated in a way, if a human were involved, we would call it torture. Okay? So as a practical matter, it's not making much difference anyway. But the really bad thing is that it has the effect of making partnerships between the animal movement and institutional users. They become partners in exploitation, and that's really insidious because what does that do as a practical matter? It sends the message there are good and bad ways to exploit. That's what it does. It makes people feel better about continuing to consume. Okay, let's look at some of this stuff here. Yes, the welfare position, the Singer's position and Bentham's position, the lives of animals matter less. Okay, the lives of animals matter less because they have no interest in continuing to live. So taking their life is not morally bad. We're taking your life is because you're self-aware, they're not self-aware, so it doesn't matter. Okay? All right. It's ineffective. The property status of animals ensures the interest will receive little protection. All right, here's the, okay, now, I want you to look at this. Well, I don't know, you turn away. How technical do you want me to be? I can't get the light. Somebody should. You can just I guess you can just take one of those plates back there. The hotel will probably be upset with Bob. Can you read that letter? No. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. You're going to have to trust me. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. The undersigned animal welfare, animal protection, and animal rights organizations would like to express their appreciation and support for the pioneering initiative being taken by Whole Foods Market in setting farm animal compassionate standards. We hope and expect these standards will improve the lives of millions of animals. It's signed by Peter Singer on Peter's behalf and the following organizations: Animal Rights International, Animal Welfare Institute, Animal Place, Animal Protection Institute, Association of Vets for Animal Rights, Bay Area Vegetarians, Compassion Over Killing, Doris Day Animal League, Farm Sanctuary, Humane Society of the United States, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, Mercy for Animals, Vegan Outreach, and Viva. Okay, so can we have some lights when I can see that there's like people in this room? Just some. I don't want, because I got a whole bunch of slides. So, can I have some lights, please? Okay, yeah. No! Alright, now I regard this as a historical, this is basically, thanks, Mike. I regard this as a historically important document. Because what this basically did was it inaugurated the modern instantiation of the animal welfare movement in terms of the happy exploitation movement. Here you have all of the major groups in the United States and the father of the animal rights movement sending a letter to John Mackey saying we express our, quote, appreciation and support for the pioneering system of happy exploitation. What? 2005, but it gets worse. Just setting me up. Okay. All right. So that's 2005. This letter's and this was on the Whole Foods website for like 2 years. And Singer was interviewed about this. I have all this stuff. Anybody wants documentation? I'll be happy to give you more documentation you would ever possibly want. Singer was asked about this, and what he said was, he said, "Well, I wrote it to him for public, because people were saying, gee." Professor Singer, isn't this really bad that that they're using this letter? Whole Foods is using this letter. And Peter said, "Well, I didn't send it to him to be put in his file drawer. I sent it to him so that he could use it." And so Peter was not at all upset that this was on the Whole Foods website as they were promoting happy exploitation. Okay. All right. So here now, this is taken. Yeah. Okay. The sign on the left says, product of USA, whole organic chicken. And then there's that little yellow thing underneath it. $1.99 a pound. How sad, some little being. Her life is worth $1.99. It's just horrible. And the sticker next to it says, Global Animal Partnership, Animal Welfare Rating Step 2. Okay, this is what comes out of this whole thing with Singer. Now you go to the Global Animal Partnership. This is the organization which has created the 5-step rating process that Whole Foods and some of the other stores use. And who is on the board? I don't know if you can see it, but along with Paul Willis, who is the manager at the Nyman Ranch Pork Company, yes indeed, along with him and some other notables, is Wayne Cassell, Chief Executive and President of the Humane Society of the United States. So we've got there's Dan Probert, who's the executive director of Country Natural Beef, Paul Willis from the Nyman Ranch, Ed Lamacchia, who is the procurement guy for Whole Foods, and Wayne Cassell, who heads the largest animal organization in this country and was one of the signatories of that. But let's not brag on Wayne and HSUS. There's PETA giving Whole Foods an Animal Welfare Friendly Award. PETA gave them an award, okay? And let's not rag on PETA because here we have Veg News, the People magazine of the vegetarian thing. There we have Veg News having John Mackey on the cover. And you can't see the picture very clearly, but if you looked at the original picture, there's cheese in the background and stuff like that. They're giving, and they named him the Businessman of the Year several times, but they put him on the cover of the magazine. So it's not just HSUS, it's all these organizations promoting happy exploitation. Here's PETA. This is, in case you can't read it, here's Bell and Evans. This is the Bell and Evans chicken website. As you can see, there's an HSUS emblem and a PETA emblem. The Humane Society of the United States fully supports Bell and Evans' switch to slow induction anesthesia. Thanks very much. Thanks. The slow induction anesthesia system Bell and Evans has developed will improve bird welfare by eliminating live dumping and live shackling and worker contact with live birds, says Matt Prescott, spokesperson for HSUS. Now, not to be undone, and let's not rag on HSUS unduly, because right under that is my dear friend Ingrid Newkirk, who says, for the last year, we have worked closely with people for the ethical treatment of animals. Ingrid Newkirk wrote, this is a quote from Ingrid Newkirk of PETA. Bell and Evans shows that animal welfare and good business can go hand in hand. You better believe it, you're right. Can go hand in hand. Can go hand in hand. And by listening to consumers' wishes, Bell and Evans has set a new standard for the chicken supply industry. That's PETA. That's PETA saying this on the Bell and Evans website. You. Here's HSUS talking about how Aramark, which is a big institutional, we have them at Rutgers, Aramark, and you know they're a big food service company, and they gave them the what award was it? Is it the Henry Spear Award? Yeah, I guess they gave them the Henry Spear Award. Henry Spear he was an animal rights guy a long time ago. He was an interesting guy, but he's dead now, and. But they now have an award. HSUS has an award named after. You know, once you die, they can really destroy you. They can destroy you because you can't bring a defamation suit where you have to be alive to do that. So poor Henry is probably spinning in his grave somewhere, knowing that HSUS has got an award named after him that they give to Aramark because Aramark committed to go with cage-free eggs. So this is an award they gave them, and this is like from 2 weeks ago. Breaking news: Wayne Cassell, he's the guy. Wayne has on his blog, breaking news, Aramark goes all in on cage-free, making more progress for hens. I mean, here we have it. It's not just the United States, it's all over the place. Here's Animals Australia. Animals Australia applauds Woolworth's plan to ditch cage-free eggs, and there was one sentence that I did. Here we go. Here's Animals Australia. Hens have been paying a terrible price for cheaper eggs. It's terrific that Woolworths has acknowledged this and taken an historical, ethical stand on this issue. I don't know about you people, it takes my breath away that an animal organization is saying hens have been paying a terrible price and now Woolworths is becoming a moral leader. I mean, what sort of message? I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Yes, it's crazy. She sees it, he's a kid. Okay? All right. And it's not just promoting happy exploitation. The animal movement has gotten into the business of creating labeling systems. Okay, they've created labeling systems. This is certified humane, raised and handled. This is a project that a number of animal people magazine supports them, or newspaper, whatever the hell that thing is, supports them. HSUS was involved with this. The ASPCA was involved with this. And so they have a happy exploitation label. So when you go to the store, as a matter of fact, who was it? Somebody mentioned the fact that there was Tammy Bryant, Professor Bryant yesterday. Tammy, she mentioned that there was a big fight. The animal people were upset that that eggs were being labeled with some humane, happy egg label that they disagreed with, and they got a great victory. And the great victory was now they have to meet the standards of certified humane, raised and handled. So it's been a big step forward. I mean, when you have labels put out by animal organizations where you put a stamp of approval, it's not just a stamp of approval like Ingrid saying Bell and Evans is just wonderful. You've got actually a stamp of approval on the eggs. Think about that. Think about how perverse that is. Would that happen in any human rights movement? The answer is no. You'd be laughed out of the room. But for us, it's like you speak against this stuff. You want to see, I mean, really, one of these days I'm thinking of doing a little YouTube video where I'm going to sit by a fire and I'm going to read. I'm going to read all the hate mail I get from animal people. The stuff I get is just remarkable. And a lot of it's vile. And people get really upset with me because they say I'm being divisive. Well, you know what? If you support this stuff, I think this is nonsense. If that makes me divisive, I'll be happy to be divisive. But you've got this is from that label. Humane Farm Animal Care is the leading nonprofit certification organization dedicated to improving the lives of farm animals in food production from birth through slaughter. The goal of the program is to improve the lives of farm animals by driving consumer demand for kinder and more responsible farm animal practices. When you see the certified humane raised and handled, registered trademark, label on a product, you can be assured that food products have come from facilities that meet precise objective standards for farm animal treatment. Don't tell me that we don't have a movement that is promoting animal exploitation. This is promoting animal exploitation. Here is Humane Choice. The Humane Society International is a branch of the Humane Society of the United States. And Humane Society International in Australia has the Humane Choice label. And the Humane Choice label says, a true free-range label. Well, you know the animals have the best life and death offered to any farm animal. This is HSUS saying this, people. They basically live their lives as they would have done on old McDonald's farm. Old McDonald's farm, born and raised on pastures and being allowed to satisfy their behavioral needs, to forage and move untethered and uncaged. Free access to outside areas from birth, shade when it's hot, shelter when it's cold, with a good diet and humane death. That's the Humane Society of the United States. That's an organization, if you criticize, people get very upset. You're being divisive. Okay, here's the actual first one of these things was in Britain. This is Freedom Food. It started in the mid-1990s. We all thought it was a joke. The joke was on us. This is Freedom Food. Freedom Food. We know that the majority of people, more than 70%, are concerned about farm animal welfare, but knowing what to do can be hard. So instead of telling people to go vegan, we work with retailers, supermarkets, convenience stores, farm shops to increase visibility of Freedom Food at point of sale. By the way, you have to pay money to get to use these labels. You have to pay these people money. Okay. We also work with food branch chefs, restaurant owners, and food service companies to encourage them to buy from Freedom Food approved farms or help them bring their suppliers up to Freedom Food approved status so it's easy for us as shoppers to choose the higher welfare option. And this is Compassion Growth Farming, which there is not a corporation that exploits animals in the universe that they have not given an award to. They have the Good Egg Award, the Good Pork Award, the Good Beef Award. Through our Good Farm Animal Welfare Awards program, we engage and reward market-leading food companies across Europe for their current policies or commitments that results in positive impacts on farm animal welfare and their supply chains, etc., etc., etc. And here, this is Bob Linden mentioned. This was on the Humane Society Facebook site, on the Farmer Outreach site. They gave $1 off on Good Morning Bacon, and it says, print this coupon to get $1 off crate-free bacon from Applegate. Breakfast just got tasty. The HSUS. Okay, and there is Joe Maxwell. He's a VP. He's a vice president. You give donations to HSUS. This clown gets them. Okay, this is one of their VPs. He's a pig farmer. He's a pig farmer.
Breakfast is Sunday.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, the animal people are saying, the animal movement is saying that we're not promoting happy exploitation. Francione's wrong. We're not promoting. Sorry, there's the empirical evidence. They are promoting. The problem is, people, you can't promote animal welfare reform without promoting happy exploitation. Because if you're pushing for a welfare reform, the only way you're going to get it is by praising industry for accepting it, or praising legislators for making industry accept it. And so you end up making normative positive, you necessarily make normatively positive statements about the welfare reform. You see what I'm saying? And so the bottom line is, we have a movement that promotes happy exploitation. And that's, yes, I coined that expression, happy exploitation. They don't use it, I use it. But that's what it is. It's a happy exploitation movement. There's the empirical proof. To say that PETA is doing it, HSUS is doing it, Mercy for Animals is doing it, Compassion for Animals, they're all doing it. Every single one of them is doing it. They're all promoting happy exploitation. So I think animal welfare is bad because it is immoral, it is ineffective, and it makes partners. It forces a partnership to exist between animal exploiters and the animal people. Now, what do the welfare say about this? They say, well, we have to do something. Well, you know what? This is worse than nothing. So, we have to do something to help the animals suffering now. The bottom line is you can't do anything to help the animals suffering now. All the animals who are in existence now will be dead by the time that, you get around to getting something changed. That's point number one. Point number two is that, is this really doing anything? Is this stuff doing anything except making people feel comfortable about continuing to exploit animals? We're all in sort of, we all regard it as this great horrible tragedy and mystery. Why do people who are vegan go back and they're not vegans anymore? Well, in part, they've got the quote experts, the animal experts, telling them, we can help you engage in less abusive, more compassionate exploitation. It just doesn't work. I mean, this is not something. This is worse than nothing. They'd be better off if they did nothing. Industry would correct itself. Its own economists would they want to be efficient exploiters, right? They just have to get the information to be efficient exploiters. If the animal movement didn't exist, they would come to a lot of these efficiencies all by themselves. They don't need animal people, not only telling them what to do, but praising them for doing it and putting their stamp of approval on it. Okay? So it doesn't work, and it creates this bizarre partnership. And so to say that we have to do something, it's like, well, you're not going to stop eating, you have to stop people from eating animals overnight. That's right, I understand that, I really do. I really understand that. But I think we have to be clear. If somebody gets the message and says, I care, but I'm not ready to go vegan, that's their choice. If they want, I always tell people, I've discussed this, I really care about it, but I can't go vegan. I'll try as hard as I can, and then when I get to the point where I realize I'm not going to get this person to make a decision to go vegan, I will say, well then, go vegan for breakfast for 2 weeks and see your arms and legs don't fall off, you don't go blind. Then you go vegan for a couple of weeks at lunch, you see that that's okay, that works out, and then then you go vegan for dinner for a couple of weeks, then you're vegan. But I never tell them, oh, go get cage-free egg, I will never, ever, ever, and neither should you ever say to people, it's okay to eat animal products because you're on a journey. If I hear that journey nonsense once more time, it's nonsense that, you're on a journey. I don't care about what journey you're on. If somebody says to me, I realize racism is wrong, but I'm on a journey. And so I do racist jokes on Mondays. It's called Racist Joke Free Monday. The analogy works. It's exactly what's Meatless Monday. It's the same damn thing, right? It's this idea of getting people to accept this idiotic idea that this is a meaningful moral action. It's not. It's an immoral action, and what's really insidious about it is that it's presented by the experts, the animal people, as a moral choice. It's not. So if somebody says to me, well, I'm on a journey, I said, well, that's interesting, but I don't really care about your journey. If it's wrong, they say, well, you weren't a vegan all your life. Yeah, that's right, I ate animal products until I was in my 20s. That doesn't mean that, it's like saying, well, okay, so it took me it was a long time ago. I didn't know what vegan was. I never heard of it being back then. And, so it was a long time. It's been 33 years that I was vegan. And so, the fact that it took me a while to get to be vegan, so what? That's like saying, well, it took some people in South Carolina, 20 years to sort of realize that, that maybe that racism and segregated bathrooms were not a good idea. So we say, oh, okay, well, it took them a long time. So they're on a journey. The answer is, I don't care what journey you're on. If we agree that racism is bad, you stop it. You stop it. You don't advocate for, well, let's take this, blah, blah, blah. That's not, it just doesn't work. We need baby steps. Baby steps. Baby steps are for babies, okay? Baby steps, and you know what? I don't think these are baby steps. I think these are big steps backward. I don't see these things as baby steps in a positive direction. I don't see these as Monday as baby steps in a positive direction. I see this as big step in a bad direction. I see all this stuff as horribly corrosive of the animal movement and moving things back. The jury, really, I did this all the time. When I made the big mistake, huge mistake. I actually went to, I was invited to animal rights 2013, I think 2013, in Washington last year. And I negotiated because they wanted to say, well, certain things you can't say. I said, no, that doesn't work with me. And so they wanted me to come. I actually did a written agreement with Alex that I could say whatever I wanted to say. And he regretted that. And you know what? Mercy for animals. I mean, they were all there. They were furious with the fact that I put the single letter up. They signed it. They were furious. And I was told by Alex I should have done that because I wasn't supposed to name names. And I said, I told you, if you look at the document that we signed, I told you I was good at anything because I can't do this without you. And so I went in, but I had all these people, all these welfares telling me, oh, well, but we're really all abolitionists. I said, that's like George Bush saying he's in favor of world peace. He's got to be warrior. He's got to engage in wars to get to the end of the war. I mean, that's not to say we've got to continue to promote exploitation so we can get abolition. It really is the analogy of it's like Bush saying, I'm a man of peace. That's on around. Okay. Single issue campaigns and speeches. I also like single issue campaigns.
Suggest what your next YouTube video should be.
What?
Going back to slavery and having happy slave tattoos for those slaves that are happier.
Yeah, okay, we can do that. Here's single issue campaigns are problematic in a number of respects. They convey the idea that certain forms of exploitation are better than other forms of exploitation. So the longest running, actually the second longest running, the anti-vivisection campaign, the longest running single issue campaign is that has been very successful. But the second longest running one is the anti-fur issue. Okay? And so it gives this idea that fur is somehow worse than wool and leather. And the answer is not, I love this. This is you can't see it. It's a picture of Adolf Hitler. Those who wear fur have no respect for life. So now we're doing what we're saying. If you wear fur, you're a Nazi. And you have no respect for life. Probably written by people who were wearing wool suits when they or leather shoes when they wrote it. But but it conveys this idea that there's a big difference between people. If I'm opposed to genocide, and I'm working on I'm opposed to genocide, so I'm working on a Darfur, an anti-genocide Darfur campaign. No one's going to think that I should say that genocide in Somalia or genocide in Palestine is okay. No one's going to think that, okay? Because we all, because the default starting position is that genocide is a bad thing. So if I'm working on one genocide problem, that doesn't mean I think other genocide problems are okay. It's okay to do genocide these other. But when the default position is that all animal exploitation is okay, when you single out fur, the message you send, given that the default position is that all of these uses are okay, the message you send out is that fur is not good, but leather and wool are good. And I would tell you, I've been doing this now for 3 decades. And I remember having discussions with people years ago about, are we sending out the wrong message? People say, what, fur is worse? Why is it worse? It's not worse. You don't know about the production of wool? You don't know about the production of woolsing? You know about leather? I mean, it's all hideous. It's all hideous. And the idea that fur is somehow worse than anything else is nonsense. That's a problem with signature campaigns. They tend to focus on one use and explicitly or implicitly, normatively say other uses are okay. That's a problem. Here's another one. This is World Animal. This is the live Expo thing. This is another interesting example. Okay, animals Australia is a big country, right? Animals are trucked all over the place. Okay, there are, and so this idea that shipping them to other countries is something that we shouldn't do because we ought to be slaughtering them in Australia. Well, again, it suggests that, and if you look at the rhetoric, the live export campaign, what you see is, you see a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric. You see, they're barbarians there. But it's basically, it's the same sort of, it's suggesting that somehow the animals in Australia are happier being slaughtered in Australia, even if they're shipped long distances. Okay, and even we don't even Australia has halal slaughterhouses, so they have places where these animals are killed in ways that are similar to the ways that they're killed in Indonesia. So again, it's the campaign, the live export campaign, is not a vegan campaign. It's a campaign actually to keep jobs in Australia and to make it appear as though there's some sort of qualitative difference between slaughtering animals in Indonesia and slaughtering them in Australia. Let me get to the end of this and I'll get you. Okay? Well, you go ahead. All right. This is great. Another problem with signature campaign is their species. They make it appear as though some animals are more morally worthy than others. This is everybody was orgasming over the Ringling Brothers deal a few weeks ago. Oh, it's great. We did an elephant elephants out of Big Brother circuses in 3 years. Nobody's bothered to mention that they just introduced camel stunts. They're still going to continue to use lions and tigers and horses and dogs. But this is a 35-year, this has been going on the whole time. The Big Brother circus thing has been going on the entire time I have been involved in this movement. Okay, 35 years. And they get the elephants out. And the elephants, it's like nobody's also bothered to mention these elephants aren't like going to be returned to the wild. They're going to go to some place in Florida that bring people home. That basically research. They did research on animals for elephant diseases, and they do breeding. So these animals are going to end up being bred so that they produce elephants for zoos and stuff like that. This is a victory. I think it's a feat. Here we have victory for dolphins and dolphin-safe tuna. This is actually one of my here's Wayne himself of HSU is telling us that great victory. That the dolphin-safe tuna label will be continued and will be protected. It's not going to be watered down. But nobody bothers to mention what about the tuna? They had a campaign a few years ago to stop the seal kill, and this is the campaign was boycott Canadian seafood. So eat seafood from other countries, don't eat seafood from Canada. So it's like, well, what about the fish? So this whole idea that seals matter more than fish, that elephants matter more than camels or horses, this idea that and again, most of the time, the animals we fetishize are the ones that we think are more like us. So it's like I think dolphins, because elephants and dolphins, they act in ways that we understand. So we say, well, they are then more like us, so they match us. And that's wrong. That's like saying they're light skinned, so they're better people of color than dark skinned people. It's the same sort of thinking. It's like we're setting ourselves up as the standard in a hierarchical way, and then keeping everybody else in an oppressed position. This is the same with the seal slaughter, and they're boycotting Canadian seafood. This is from Paul Watson from Sea Shepherd. He says, you cannot compare the killing of animals in a domestic slaughterhouse. He says, yes, I'm vegan, but we're promoting veganism not for animal rights reasons, but for environmental conservation reasons. You cannot compare the killing of animals in a domestic slaughterhouse to the killing of a whale. What goes on with those whales, the dolphins and Tai Chi, would never be tolerated in slaughterhouse. I do not know whether Paul Watson has ever been in the slaughterhouse. If he hasn't been in the same ones I've been. Okay? Because, I admit it, I've not personally seen the killing of a whale. I've personally not been in Tai Chi. I cannot believe it. And what are we talking about? I mean, is this what we're reduced to? Like, which is worse? The torture of the slaughterhouse or the torture of Tai Chi? But I mean, this idea that, what goes on with the whales in Tai Chi is nothing like what goes on in the domestic slaughterhouse. First of all, you've got to also factor in the suffering of the whales are swimming around until the end. And it's horrible. I agree. It's terrible thing to do. The animals that are actually being killed in the domestic slaughterhouse that Paul apparently thinks is like some sort of utopia, they're living a horrible life the whole time. And then they're killed in an absolutely brutal way. Absolutely brutal way. All of them. Okay? So this idea that, what goes on with the whales is not like what goes on with the animals in the domestic slaughterhouse. But here you have an animal person explicitly saying that there is a qualitative difference. It takes 10 to 45 minutes to kill a whale, and they die in horrific agony. That would be completely intolerable for people in any slaughterhouse in the world. Really? False. Also, they're endangered to protect the species. Who cares? Pigs and cows are not. Who cares? I mean, you might want to say, well, the last elephant has some sort of value in terms of ecology that the cows have. But as far as, what difference does it make? I mean, as far as from a moral point of view, a cow, 1 of 8 billion cows is as morally important as the last elephant. There are part of the ecosystem, which pigs and cows are not. It always bothers me that comparisons are brought up, especially when it's brought up by the Japanese who eat more pigs, cows, and chickens than all the people of Australia and New Zealand combined. Only 1% of Japanese people eat whales. For the most part, they eat pigs and cows, pigs and chickens. It's a ridiculous analogy. It's this whole idea that, we can't compare the killing of whales with the killing of cows. Sorry, Paul, I just think that's wrong. But again, it's this idea that whales matter more than cows. I think exactly what species is about. And also, these single-issue campaigns are really bad because they oftentimes involve discrimination against humans. This has been around forever. This is it takes 40 dumb animals to make a fur coat, only one to wear it. And there we have a woman, you don't see her face. All you see is the below the waist with her skirt and her black high, her black stockings and her high heels dragging. This is I regard and have for years. This has been around forever, and I remember having arguments with people in the 1980s about this, saying I thought this was sexist, I thought this was misogynistic, and I still think that. This is another thing. In June of last year, I was invited by the Bar Association of the City of New York to come and talk about parks. Parks is a ritual that is practiced by some Orthodox Jews, mostly Hasidim. And what they do is they take the chicken and they swing the chicken around the head and the sins of the person is supposed to be transferred to the chicken, and then the chicken has her throat cut. And it's done in Brooklyn, and it's done as part of a multi-day thing. A lot of chickens are killed and they go through this thing. So a lot of animal people were very excited about this. Now, I agree, this is terrible. But the problem I have with this campaign is what the Jews are doing in Crown Heights, wherever they're doing it, is no different from what's going on in Crown Heights 3 blocks away in the commercial chicken slaughterhouse. So it's like, if these animals weren't being killed by the Hasidim in Crown Heights, they would be 3 blocks away in Crown Heights being slaughtered in a chicken slaughterhouse. And so I went to this thing and I saw animal people, and they were showing all these pictures of these guys as Hasidim, and they were doing all these terrible things to chickens, and animal people were angry and they were outraged. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm missing something here, because why are we focusing on the Hasidim? Why are we focusing on the Hasidim? And I actually asked, I said, can't you add something to your campaign that says that we're not saying that the Hasidim are doing anything other than what everybody else is doing? Who eats chicken or eats animals. Anybody who eats chicken is supporting that sort of stuff. So, and I asked, I said, you can't do that. Now, they didn't give me a reason why, but again, it's not rocket science. They want to get people involved in this campaign, and they don't want to say to them, if you're eating chicken, you're as bad as those Jews. Okay? They don't want to do that. So what they're saying is those Jews are bad. We have to stop what they're doing. And I'm sorry, I think that whole thing is so anti-Semitic. It's a fault. It's really fun. And again, I got a lot of aggravation because I came out against this thing. And you ought to see the mail that I got. It's being headed by United Cultural Users, Karen Davis. People got very angry. I'm sorry, this is anti-Semitic. What the Jews are doing in Crown Heights is not good. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm saying that it is no different from what everybody else is doing every place else. And anybody who eats chicken is supporting the same thing. So why do we have campaigns that focus on a particular subset of Orthodox Jews? I think that's exploitative. I think it's anti-Semitic. I think a lot of this campaign, the Tai Chi campaign, is so violent anti-Japanese. The dog eating, cat eating stuff, so violent, totally anti-Asian, anti-China, anti-Chinese, anti-Koreans. The whale stuff, again, Japan, anti-Japanese. These things, the fur campaign, misogynistic. These single-issue campaigns, I think, are exploitative in some very, very serious and profound ways. So, this is another Michael Vick and Andre Robinson. Andre Robinson kicked his cat, didn't kill the cat. Shouldn't have kicked the cat. Kid shouldn't have kicked his cat. Everybody wants to put Andre Robinson in jail. People still hate Michael Vick because he was involved in dog fighting. Well, yeah, he should have been involved in dog fighting. It was a bad thing to do. But Michael Vick went to jail. We don't put non-vegans in jail, and non-vegans are no different from Michael Vick. There may be a psychological difference between somebody who goes to the store and buys meat and somebody, who goes to the dog fight, watches the dog fight. There's no moral difference. There may be a psychological difference. There is no moral difference. We are all like that. People who are not vegans, who are imposing suffering and death on animals, and the best justification they have is palate pleasure, are no different from Michael Vick. I like sitting around the fighting ring, watching the animals fight with each other. And you all like watching, sitting around the barbecue pit, roasting the pork animals that have been treated every bit as bad and tortured every bit as bad. You like sitting around your summer barbecue, it's roasting their corpses. What's the difference? And the answer is there isn't. Okay? But again, the single issue campaign, unfortunately, a lot of these cases, like the Andre Robinson case, Michael Vick, there's been a bunch of them that I write about from time to time. They were always about people of color. And I believe that it was really motivating. This is racist. And I said that on CNN, and you should see the hate mail I got on it. But I do think it's true. So in sum, animal welfare positions should be rejected. It's immoral, ineffective, counterproductive, it's speciesist. The alternative, creative, nonviolent, vegan advocacy. That's what we can do. We can all do that. You don't need an organization. You need yourself. You need your self-confidence, and you need to educate yourself. You need to understand. That's one of the reasons why Ann and I wrote Eat Like You Care, was we tried. That was intended for people who cared about animals but weren't vegan, but it was also intended for vegans who didn't know how to educate, and that's why we wrote that book. And so, if you want to be an effective advocate, before you educate other people, you've got to educate yourself. That is key, people. That is key. So you've got to understand a little bit of the economics. You've got to understand why animal welfare doesn't work, it can't work, it's structurally limited because of the property status of animals and this niggling thing called economics, which makes it virtually certain that animal welfare standards will always be low. Okay? And will, for the most part, do nothing more than make animal exploitation more efficient. So you need to educate yourself. But we can do this. We don't need to convince everybody. We don't need to get everybody overnight to go vegan. What we need to do, and there have been interesting studies on this phenomenon, we need to get 10% of the population, 10% of the population embracing ethical veganism. Not just welfare veganism, none of this, it's like crate-free egg, cage-free eggs, crate-free pork, or veganism. It's all your choice. We're all on a journey. None of that I'm talking about firmly believing in the justice of and seeing veganism as a moral imperative. If we had 10% of the population that embraced that, it wouldn't change everybody. By no means would it change everybody to be vegan. You know what it would do? It would change the conversation. It would change the conversation, and it would focus away from treatment and in favor of we would start talking about the moral justification of using animals, and we would quickly see we have a moral justification, and that we are when it comes to animals. I remember in 1985 having a discussion with some of the leaders of the animal movement. And I said, the issue was whether we should support the 1985 amendments to the Animal Welfare Act. And I opposed it. And they said, well, what would you do? And I said, I would spend every time, every cent we have, every minute of time, every ounce of energy out there doing vegan advocacy. Oh, you're not being realistic. I'm sorry. If we had done that in 1985, we'd have hundreds of thousands of more, at least, vegans now. And we would have the beginnings of a political movement, which is ultimately what we need if we're ever going to win this. We need a political movement of people who are committed to a singular idea of veganism as a moral baseline and justice for non-human animals. We can have that, but we're never going to have it unless we want to have it. I have it on my website, The World is Vegan If You Want It, which I ripped off. I acknowledge I was ripping off John Lennon. War is over. He had that big billboard in Times Square years ago. War is over if you want it. And he was trying to tell us, John Lennon was trying to tell us, you want the Vietnam War, you make it end. If you want war to end, you can make it end. If you want this to end, if you want the world to be vegan, you can do it. But you know what? It's just not up to me, it's up to you. And the responsibility is not mine, it's mine, but it's also ours. And that means you've got to educate yourself. You want to change the world, educate yourself, get out there and educate others. Jeff and his son, come up and answer this question.
Wouldn't the argument be made then that by patronizing these establishments like Walmart and Whole Foods and everything, that we're helping them exploit animals? Because I'm paying them and they're still exploiting. They're using my money now to exploit animals.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you can, it would be better always to go to...
I can't hear you.
Can you go with Michael?
I agree it would be better to go to all that if they're able to, but if you're not able to, just buy vegan food at not vegan grocery stores.
By the way, this is Jeff Burrs, who is a long time, this guy's been doing abolitionist vegan advocacy for 15 years now. He's been doing it in France and Korea. And Sandra is the co-author of Vegan Kit, which we're going to have an announcement about tomorrow. I hope you come to that session. We're working on something really exciting to share with you all. It hasn't been discussed publicly yet, and we're going to discuss it. But Sandra and Jeff are two of the finest vegan advocates, abolitionists. They're out there doing stuff, and they've been doing it for years. And so, do you want to add anything? I would say one thing to you. All money is dirty. All money is dirty. So, you know, if you go to the vegan grocery store, and, you know, it may be that they have employees who don't, you know, who aren't vegans. So you're putting money in their pocket, they're going to go out and buy meat. So there's really no way you can make money. All money is dirty. I mean, I was listening to that fellow who was speaking before, I don't know who he was, during lunch, who was saying that, you know, that he doesn't think that there's a right or wrong answer about whether we should patronize a restaurant. I mean, I think we ought to always, if we have a choice, patronize the non-vegan restaurant, or the vegan restaurants, so that we can keep vegan restaurants in business. But it's not because I think that there's something inherently wrong about eating in a non-vegan. I don't think you should eat non-vegan food. But I mean, the biggest problem I have with a lot of this stuff is that what we're doing is by promoting the idea that McDonald's ought to have a vegan option, or Burger King ought to have a vegan option. First of all, they're not vegan for the most part, but second, even if they were, what we're doing is when you know, a bunch of kids are out on Friday night, it used to be the case that if one of them was a vegan, they would have to go to a vegan place to satisfy their one friend who was vegan. They might grumble about it, but they would do it. Now, once Burger King, you know, makes a vegan option available, then they all go to, you know, it's sending the wrong message, and I don't think we should be doing it. But it's a more complicated issue. You in the back.
Yeah, what about if where you live there is not a vegan store? For example, I live in San Francisco, and we have Rainbow, and Rainbow sells eggs and cheese. And then what are the options? Is it a Rainbow, Whole Foods, and we don't know what to do.
I shop at Whole Foods. I mean, I hate doing it. I usually do shop at a small store, but Trader Joe's and Whole Foods has now pushed those places out of business. So I shop at Whole Foods. I just make sure, I mean, one of the things I do is I always try to have conversations with people at Whole Foods so that I help educate people to not buy animal products. But, you know, I don't think that, it's all money's dirty, you know, I mean, you know, you can do what you can do, you know, do what you can do. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Katie, and I work at PETA. I want to first say that you definitely respect 30 years of work, but you were one of the first people that I ever learned about animal rights from.
But there's a but coming. I feel it in myself.
Because, you know, a lot of people do a lot of different types of advocacy, and I think it's important to consider them that we're all trying really hard to do the right thing. But the one question that I was thinking about during your presentation was just that when you were discussing this morning, you mentioned that you don't use graphic videos. When you were talking about how you really want to focus on the value of animals as individuals. And when we talk about welfare reform...
No, I didn't say that. What I said was that I wanted to focus on the idea of use and not treatment.
Right. Pardon me,
That's
sir.
different.
Yeah. But that it's not so much about the horrible, you know, convincing people by shock tactics or this is so horrible but that they exist and deserve rights as a matter of fact, right? Basically what I'm trying to get to is if we make it so for that individual chicken, you know, we don't break her legs and pull her out of the transport crate. She doesn't have to feel her throat being slit. And we're still advocating for her as an animal for the sake that she's an animal and vegan advocacy. Why does that make that worse?
Kate, let me ask you a question. You saw the quote that Ingrid had in Bell and
Oh, yeah.
Do you think there's any defense in that?
Well, so what I do know, because I've been at PETA for 6 years, so that's kind of the time period I've got really well. Is we've got a movement that's moving very far from that. Ingrid, about 6 months ago, sent a video to every single person on the PETA list. So anyone who signed up to circus protests, anyone who said, hey, I pledge to not use products tested on animals, we sent a video of Ingrid talking about how we're categorically against humane meat.
Wait. I saw that video, Katie, and as far as I'm concerned, it was chicanery. She's saying on one hand that she's opposed to humane meat, on the other hand, y'all are giving awards to Whole Foods. Has Peter rescinded its support of that? Has any of those groups, but you don't know about any of it, has PETA rescinded its support of John Mackey and Whole Foods? Have they rescinded it?
We've not, to my knowledge, we haven't rescinded anything. But what I can say, which I think is really important for people to understand, is that groups are made out of people, and we change directions. And PETA did not sign on to the UAP bill, which Mercy for Animals, other groups did. And we're moving towards a very anti-humane meat. I've worked on campaigns against Whole Foods in order to really push these issues.
Well, what campaign do you have against Whole Foods?
Well, we've been working behind the scenes to get them to remove a lot of the labeling that talks about things like compassion in every bite, which is disgusting. We've had protests.
But have you said anything publicly which indicates PETA does not support Whole Foods because the public images they do?
What we do, we haven't publicly gone after them, but instead what we do is talk about vegan options. And that's what's so important. It's just like you shop there, I shop there occasionally too to get things that I couldn't get at a Ralph's. The same thing, you know, if you can go to a vegan grocery store, always the best. But I feel like when I hear this presentation, you have a lot of amazing philosophy, but it doesn't necessarily come into the practical world.
Katie, Katie, let me say something. I'm the most relentlessly practical person you'll ever meet in your life. If you think that nonsense is moving the ball ahead, if you think that's practically effective, I must disagree with you profoundly. I think a vegan movement, a movement of animal people who made it clear that no consumption of animals can be morally justified, who never gave awards. You gave an award, PETA gave an award to Temple Grandin for her visionary, they gave her a visionary award, Katie, for her work in, but you're telling me that they're not in favor of humane exploitation? I'm sorry, Katie, the empirical evidence is quite clear. They are in favor of it. So Ingrid can speak.
What I would just like to say, since I have a lot of respect for you, as I said, I know your head's been hurting. Again, really love everything.
Throbbing.
Throbbing, sorry. I'm misrepresenting you again.
Yep.
I think, and you know, you talked about the arguments for welfare reform, is that whether you agree with it or not, you know, whether you waste your time or not, that from the perspective of the chicken, we also have to really find that pain. And I worry when I hear that, you know, like a behind the scenes worker in Deersfield that gets rid of lead horning, some cows on the horns cut off without any pain or their butt burned off without any pain relief. Behind the scenes campaign, all that means is that cows are going to suffer. And I just don't quite understand why when we're advocating these, which we do, and if anybody has questions about it, they can talk to me about it, that we can't make things a little bit less horrible.
Katie, it's not, I was clear before that I think less suffering is better than more suffering. What I said, very clearly, I thought, and if I didn't, I apologize. The problem I have is the fact that your organization and all these other organizations are out there busy, normatively promoting. You know the number of people who I've had discussions about Whole Foods with who have said to me, yeah, but PETA gave them an award. So, you know, y'all can be, you know, concerned behind the scenes all you want. The bottom line is, the public image is very clear. And until Ingrid, and say hi to her, but no, seriously, I mean, I was once very close to her. I think what you need to do is go back and talk to Ingrid. And you know what? I'd be happy to sit down and have lunch with her. Because I think one thing she ought to do, in addition to getting rid of all that misogynistic garbage, as a woman, I do not see how you can compensate. But I would be happy to have a discussion with Ingrid. She ought to come out and say, we made a big mistake in endorsing Whole Foods. We made a big mistake in giving someone what does that say?
2 minutes. I want to say that all these organizations, I used to support some of them.
Yeah.
Because I love animals, and
Yeah.
when I was a vegetarian, I used to support them.
Yeah.
And then one day I asked myself, like PETA, for example, they put on these horrific pictures of animals, and so they can get to the heart of people so they can give them more money. And my point is that if an organization has been there for so many years and haven't fixed the problem, something is wrong with this organization. I think that they are more for the money than for the animals.
Well, the problem
And-
with all-
and
problem with
one
all-
thing that I want to say, and if I may, one thing that I want to say is that why don't they put pictures of animals that they have saved, all the progress that they have made, and how was the world when they started, and how is the world now, so we can see the improvement and we can see what exactly that
The bottom line is, we have had animal welfare for the better part of 200 years. We are exploiting more animals now, today, in more horrific ways than any time.
Exactly, that's my point.
But look, remember something about the dynamics of organization. Once an organization gets big, it's got to bring in more and more money to raise money for its employees, to send people all over the world so they can sit naked in cages, and all that sort of stuff. And so that costs money. And what ends up happening with all these organizations, they all start out with good intentions, and they become businesses. So take one question, you over there, and I'll give you that.
So, I just to you.
One second.
Yeah. 5 to 10 minutes,
So-
I have no problem with it.
So we'll go on another 10 minutes with this workshop, and then Lorelei from Truth or Drought come up here. I need to leave the room, so another 10 minutes, and then she can come up with it.
Yes, go ahead.
Gary, I have a question. You will use that position, not that it's wrong, and not you said that you want to get to 10% vegan so you could have a political movement,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
And yet, I heard you say that legislation doesn't work, so I would want to...
Well, when I say movement, I mean a movement which is going to get serious discussions going about the use of animals. Okay? Now, it is conceivable if we did have a significant political movement that we might actually start banning them. But if we had that movement, it would be happening in a different context. We wouldn't be doing single issue campaigns and welfare reform. We would be a vegan movement that was very clear that all exploitation had to go, and we were abolishing, so we were taking certain bricks out of the wall. Right now, that's not what we're doing. So I'm not saying that any time legislation is going to be feasible or viable, any time I think it's going to be wild for it to happen. But what we need to do is to get a movement together, a serious movement together that will promote the idea that animal use, however quote humane, is not morally justified. Okay? Go ahead. Yes,
I was just gonna say, when you said, because if you compare the slavery, when you compare the slavery to the
Yes.
animals being active for so long, it's like us people, we fought for slavery to be over once, and it's like can't we just fight for it again? And can't we all just come up together and stand up again?
Well, that's what we need to do. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying we need to do.
And then we could.
I'm not advocating that we have war. I'm not advocating violence. But I think we need collective action. I agree. I'm all in favor of collective action. I would love to see a huge march in Washington for veganism. It wouldn't be veggie. I hate veggie, VEGN, any of the stuff that would be vegan. We would have a vegan march. I would love to see a march. The problem is that every time something like that gets started, it always gets, added to the vegetarians come in. And they say, well, you can't be divisive. Sorry, it's got to be clear that veganism is the only position. Yes.
Well, I just want to say, I'm totally in for vegan march because I think about some of the other social justice movements like gay rights and women's rights, and I totally think it'd be awesome if we were marching down the mall, Washington D.C., 100,000 strong, with that clear message that no animal exploitation, no welfareism. And it's interesting because before I listened to the speech, I was doing a single campaign issues. I was, liking them and I was promoting them, and I also believe that animals shouldn't suffer. But I can totally see that that really it is kind of distracting from the central idea that we can't eat animals at all. We can't enforce them at all. I didn't really realize that.
Look, if we were to, what would happen is, imagine an anti-slavery movement where people said, we've got to have more humane slavery because isn't it important that the slaves suffer less? And the answer is, if that's the position that existed in 1860, we would still have slavery. So, yes, obviously less suffering is better than more suffering, but the idea that you have a movement which is promoting the idea in an affirmative way and saying, giving awards to people like Hope, giving awards to people like Temple Grandin, it would be like giving an award to who was the guy who designed the humane, who was concerned about the humane treatment of prisoners in the concentration camps and wanted to be able to exterminate them more efficiently, more humanely. Would we give him an award? We might say, yes, it's better, that less suffering is better than more suffering. But we have organizations like PETA and other organizations giving these people awards, and I think that is go ahead.
Do you think as as we among people, do you think that PETA or the other bigger organizations may change the way that they?
Oh, I have no doubt. If all of a sudden we woke up tomorrow morning and it became clear that the donor dollars were in abolitionist veganism and they would get more money by catering to abolitionist veganism, you would watch them change right quick. I have no doubt about it. But I'm saying part of the problem is the money, the whole business angle has totally corrupted the entire system. And, really, social movements are generally made up of people who are careerists, who have careers. And I was talking about this morning upstairs in the baby room, that I think really what the fundamental problem is, you have all these people who are making a living from animals, off of animals. And so they've got to take positions which are going to keep those dollars coming in. And I think we'd be much better off having jobs and being financially, not depending on the movement for money and being out there doing grassroots work where we don't have to worry about what positions we're taking because we're going to aggravate or make donors unhappy. Because I think a lot of the strategy of these groups is have to keep the donor base as big as possible. And I think that's a real mistake.
I'd just like to quickly repeat I'd like to quickly repeat something Gary said earlier in response to the claim that PETA or other groups are working behind the scenes to supposedly improve animal welfare, whether it's behind the scenes or not. As Gary says, all that can do is further codify and entrench and enmesh us in the property paradigm. So it's just making it even more likely that animals will always be exploited in horrible ways as long as it's done efficiently. So again, whether it's behind the scenes or not, all it does is make things more efficient.
Yes.
I was going to suggest advocacy around the world. Do you have any examples of isolating statements or questions or everywhere that asking for pets or
Yeah, sometimes people will have their dog with them, and so I'll just talk about that. But generally, I use the simple argument that Gary has developed. I give away free food, and mostly it's cupcakes, but other times it's other things. But anyway, I say this cupcake is vegan. I mean, it has no egg or dairy. And they're eating it as I'm saying this. And the simple reason why I'm vegan is some of us live with cats and dogs. Cats and dogs have the same consciousness, the same feelings as the cows, chickens, and pigs. So why do we love one kind of animal and torture and kill the others? It makes no sense. Veganism is the only thing that gets us out of that contradiction. The same argument that Gary uses, I just say it in very simple terms, and people resonate with that, and it works. I'll do a session at a table for 4 hours or 6 hours, and a minimum of 2 people will tell me they want to go vegan.
Food activism, the sort of thing that he does. He sets up his booth pretty much every week, and he's got his vegan cupcakes, and he talks to people about stuff. I think there's a big a lot of people think it's styrofoam, and that that we don't get that vegan food about cake. and gets them involved in a discussion. I cannot tell you how valuable, I mean, I think one Jeff doing that is worth all these organizations. Well, actually, these organizations are counterproductive. But I mean, no one's paying him. He's not on anyone's payroll. He's not the employee of anybody. He's not a careerist advocate. He's just a guy who actually do work with children right
I have a table and a tent.
No, it's a job.
Oh, right, yeah, I work for an Indigenous Land Council in Australia doing admin.
Yeah, okay, so he's doing his thing with his Indigenous Land Council, but then on the weekends, he's out there distributing vegan cupcakes and you know, and educating people. And I think that, you know, that, look, if all you did that, if every one of you did that every weekend and got 2 people interested in going vegan, I mean, think about what the hell, I mean, look, there's, you know, there's like, what, 150 people? I mean, think of what that would do. You know, I mean, think of what that would do. But anyway.
Well, where do you set up your tent or the cupcakes?
Todd Mall in Alice Springs, population 30,000, middle of cattle country. We do get a lot of tourists, but yeah, I said a minimum of 2 people will say they want to go vegan, but I remember my record was 16 people.
I was one of the moderators on my Facebook page, and we've got 60-some-odd thousand people who we've basically gotten in 2 years. I get at least 10 emails a week, at least 10 emails a week from people all over the world. And a lot of those emails are things like, I've been a vegetarian for 20 years. I've been a member of this group and that group. No one's ever challenged me to go vegan. No one's ever told me that if animals matter more than or I regard them as morally significant, I have to go vegan. I'm out of the vegan. So it doesn't, again, it doesn't require, we can do this. You know, if we're clear educators with a clear message, we can bring people into it. We can get them to see the practical, you know, how this works, and how it makes sense to them. Anyway.
Call it for what it is. Civil rights for animals.
That's right. That's exactly.
Civil rights.
Let me say this. We're making progress. I mean, Bob's not here, but Bob Linden and I had a really rough time with the guy who was at Veg Fest in the UK. You know, Bob and I were at Loggerhead with Tim Barford. Tim Barford wrote to me last week and said he's been thinking a lot about what I said about having worked exclusively vegan events. And now they've got a big vegan commercial out at Veg Fest in London, which is happening in October. And I was shocked when he said, we want you to come to be our keynote speaker. So now I'm going to be at a vegetarian event, speaking to probably 30,000. I think that would really, you know, I mean, that would be great. And I do think, I can sort of sense that things are shifting. I think people are really disillusioned with the whole big corporate animal groups, happy exploitation thing. They see it, they see through it, they see the nonsense of it. And so now we just have to figure out what we're going to do. But remember, we can do it. If we feel that it's overwhelming, we'll never get anything done. Remember, Fidel took over took over Cuba with 28 people. I mean, he had a revolution with 20. I'm not talking about revolution. I'm saying we should have revolutions of the heart. I like that. Revolutions of the heart. I don't believe in violent revolutions. But remember, you know, we can do this if we want to do it. And if every one of us was doing vegan education, we would, you know, each of us were getting more things like Jeff's doing, like Sandra's doing, like I'm doing, like many people are doing. We could, and where's Papa and Sylvia? Yes, they're too. Well, she is an administrator on my site. They've come from Holland. They're too. I mean, we're bringing young people into this. Great, really able young people, and if we do this, we can change the world. We just have to want to do it. And we have to stop contributing to these large organizations. All they're doing is pushing things back. I think we're out of time. Thank you very much.